My day in the life as a performative man living in New York City.
Just another performative man in the wild. What is that, like some feminist book?
Excuse me?
Yeah, I bet you're not even reading it. I bet you can't even read it.
Do I know who you... Okay, what do you expect?
If you're into fashion, you're pretty much as performative as they come. So, in reality, we're all performative males, in a sense, and yes, ladies, you're one of us as well. One of the boys.
Congratulations, you're officially one of us. One of us.
See, the thing is, society requires us to be performative. These behaviors are all a part of complex frameworks that make up the larger majority of society's rules, norms, morals, social cohesion, all of which leads to socialization, and ultimately the makings of a functional society that is stable and safe for people to socialize with one another in a myriad of different social frameworks, like our schemas that shape how we interact with one another, i.e. how you interact at your place of work with those who are in an authoritative position, with a potential love interest or a random stranger online. You can think of them as mental images that your brain strings together to come to some conclusion. Now, you can imagine at the rate to which social media puts out content and how a person's worldview can be easily influenced simply by scrolling. Human interaction is performative. It's always been performative. We have to perform in order to survive our fleeting existence. However, despite this, the internet has coined a new term for a pre-existing term of biters and posers. You probably don't know what it is that I'm referring to. So here's a descriptor of who this high visibility man is.
Why do you do that?
You do know. These claro whisperers curate softness for the female gaze.
Why do you do that?
And use feminism to speedrun to the eat your patchouli stage.
Why do you do that, man?
For these pseudo-sensitive male leads, love bombing is domestic terrorism, and these war criminals just figured out what the word gaslighting means.
Why do you do that?
Is the performative male or macho man, simply put, a online meme of people who make fun of young men who put on a performative identity to hook up with women. This performance of theirs involves them dressing in this spread, which we'll talk about, listening to indie female music artists such as Claro, Laufey, and BB Doobie, which in all honesty, this was my first introduction to these artists' music, some of which I've heard largely through TikTok. Look, I don't really listen to indie rock or indie pop. It's never been my scene. I grew up in a house that listened to primarily R&B, soul, jazz, a whole lot of jazz for that matter, as well as a bunch of different artists ranging from hip-hop to a little bit of rock and punk. So you can understand why I've never heard of them. Nevertheless, these are the artists that the performative male listens to. Well, supposedly. And we'll use these female artists as a way for them to have an icebreaker, if you will, as the women they want are avid listeners or have listened to these previously mentioned artists. However, here's the thing. These types of men have been around for a long while. The reality of these newcomers, it's just a showcasing of their talent. These men have been around either as pickup artists or in the myriad of other ways that men perform in order to gain a potential love interest or a partner, or simply just somebody to hook up with. It's simply just their turn to shine in the ever revealing spotlight that we have towards men in society, but it's also just a weird cycle of alternating between hypermasculine and non-hypermasculine male trend cycles, all whilst at the same time dealing with toxic people online. To be frank, I hate this trend, specifically where we are making fun of these men who are doing this performative act, even though we ourselves are being performative in regards to this trend and not seeing the danger that these men pose to the safety of women, but also the social impact it will have on men who don't align with these type activities that these men do on a day-to-day basis, as it only takes one man to tarnish the image of every other man. For instance,
if you are a single guy trying to find love, your chances of finding a partner is reduced because other men are affecting your game, i.e.
they stepping on your yard, dog.
Why you do that?
You work to cultivate. And now I gotta ask you, is you gonna let that slide? This man's fully put his
dirty ass foot
Why you
on
do
your
that?
yard. You wanna let that slide? I don't think so. Let's move on.
For instance, an example of this adverse effect can be found on Pinterest. Right now, fashion bros who are truly into fashion and just styling themselves for themselves are being grouped into different categories of the male manipulative subcategory.
I am tired of the performative male conversation.
but can someone explain to me why I'm on Pinterest under performative male? And worst of all, the suggestions are manipulator outfit matcha.
This is the danger of having something blow up, and when I say blow up, you guys had this make the news in multiple different countries. But it's also not the first time men's fashion has been criticized by the media. You had Beau Brummel and the Macaroni Boys in the 17 and 1800s, the Hollywood men in the 1940s to the 1960s, the office men of the 80s, hipsters and metrosexual men of the early 2000s and 2010s, as well as the hype beast of the most recent decades. It really doesn't matter what time we're in, society will always question and place male expression under a microscope to monitor it. Why? Because of violence. The act, shape, reason and philosophical ideology of violence is male, which is correct in terms of the mass level of violence that has been committed by men over the vast history of human existence. But it shouldn't exclude women who also have committed acts of violence in the same capacity as men, only to much lesser degrees than men to a certain extent. So how does violence link into the performative male? I'm glad you asked. The answer is
coconuts in Barbados.
Yeah.
No, I'm joking. Frans Fons. In particular, Frans Fons' quote, "Violence is man recreating himself." One of the arguments surrounding the performative male is due to the recent hypertoxic culture of the red pill men and the manosphere as a whole, who believe men need to be leaders, take charge, and women should be submissive to them. You should also puff out your chest as to command maximum respect from the other men, whilst engaging in passing on the aura of other men and calling other men weaker and smaller. Nice. This form of masculinity was regarded as very toxic and violent, so much so that governments and social platforms began to launch investigations as were breeding hostile men. And since this is a fashion channel, these men were also engaging in activities such as peacocking, giving...
Hello, Cynthia. Oh yes, we have a brave peacock. Use that. Yes.
Giving one another fashion advice as to how you should dress if you want to command respect from other men and have women lust after you. I'm noticing a lot of men centering men first here. It's a little weird. It's a little on the nose, bro. I think, you know what? Never mind. Let me not make that joke. However, you can fill in the gaps with your own mind.
Boys being boys. Yeah. Booty queen. Booty queen. Booty queen. Just boys being boys. Booty queen. Booty queen. Boys. Booty queen. Just boys being boys. Booty queen.
However, another equally disturbing subculture of these so-called pill bros would enter this conversation: the black pill. To spare you the gross details of this world, these guys are obsessed with improving your looks by misreading scientific models on human mating behavior and the psychology of attraction, with extreme cases undergoing facial reconstruction and limb lengthening surgery. Yeah, it gets deep, bro. In the grand scheme of things, how and where does the performative male fit into this whole ordeal? These subgroups of online male culture are precursors to this whole performative male online debate. Okay, now I need to bring a little bit of input from the School of Management and Economic Sciences. Dating runs almost similar to how a business opportunity or the economy would run, based on supply and demand. Now, putting complex human interactions under the microscope of how to turn struggling singles into a profitable venture. Oh, wait, we already do that. So it isn't necessarily wrong and will help you understand how these types of men are using marketing, aggressive and silent sales strategies in order to get their prize. To say that the performative males aren't salesmen would be lies, as these young men are. But also, a round of applause, they somehow came to understand customer psychology and marketing tactics without even being in those particular fields. You can't really fault them for showing so much intellectual prowess. However, they're applying it wrongly, I guess. In light of that, these guys know how to identify a new target market and convert said identified target market into a paying customer. if you will. Let's start with their silent sales strategy. The performative male silent sales strategy is all in the way they present themselves by blending TikTok calls into one sort of hybrid style. These calls include granola boy, dark academia, he loves to read aesthetic, dad call, skater slash teenage heartthrob aka boyish style, with the average starter kid having a average beard that looks like this, which if you don't know, this is basically the full-on meta for both Instagram and TikTok, especially amongst young boys and young adults. In all honesty, these men aren't really new to fashion. In fact, we've known about them for a long while, especially within the men's fashion side. If you dive through the history of men's fashion YouTube, what men want to watch is content centered around dressing in a certain way to get with women, and it's been like this for the past, I don't know, like 8 to 10 years. Now, this doesn't account for all the men's fashion content who don't engage in this type of content. Moreover, these guys are also just hype beasts, and not just any type of hype beast, but the TikTok hype beast. See, the hype beast never disappeared. No, they simply underwent changes multiple times throughout the years. See, in fashion, these outfits have gone from the summering phase, starting from pre-COVID days, to our current timeline. It's also here where tote bags would become a mainstream staple, from fashion bros who would adopt the same look, ultimately being referred to as the conveyor belt boys or the tote bag warriors. However, I don't think that all of these dudes in particular are or became a part of the performative male agenda. The real culprit to these men is TikTok. TikTok rewards short format content that, when it comes to fashion, especially men's fashion, there's a focus on dressing for the approval of others. On the men's side of the social algorithm, for years there have been self-improvement content ranging from hair, body, skincare, fragrances, and many more that create a dreamy, sensitive man, one that reads, is into fashion, and reads female literature. Enter aggressive sales tactics. When companies launch a new product or are trying to clear dead inventory, they normally go on an aggressive sales campaign. Frequent ad campaigns, bold attention-grabbing promotionals, fixtures and signs, and in some cases, open canvassing to sell a product or service. Labubu, matcha, books, loved by female audiences coupled with a particular aesthetic sounds like sales and marketing 101 to me. However, have you ever looked at something and get the feeling like it's off, but you just can't figure out what it is you're looking at?
What's so funny? Taste one. Fuck, man, salty like shit. The fuck is this?
But it's staring at you directly in the face. Although these men are engaging in problematic behaviors, I can't help but feel a little empathetic towards them. And to be clear here, I don't condone their behavior and actions in the same light. They're just doing what the market is demanding of them, which is a lot about dating and societal expectations. See, the main issue that is flawed here is that we as society can't recognize that we have an equal hand in creating these men. We have created opportunities and formats for them to learn how to engage with women without calling it out in the first time. Even though a lot of us have called out this sort of behavior and said that you should really be dressing for yourself and loving yourself, ultimately I think there's a large flaw at play here. For one, what about the man who actually does enjoy these things? We fail to recognize that. Moreover, we also fail to recognize strong racial differences that are happening here. For instance, black people were denied the opportunity to go to school and to read, and this accounts for many other people groups as well around the world during colonialism, Jim Crow, apartheid, and what have you not. These factors then also need to be accounted for, because we are actually telling men to not engage in reading and not to actually learn from female authors and female literature. Also, I have a gripe with what these men are reading. There's one book in particular, The Second Sex, which is a book that is well within its means, but it actually disregards race, and that's what I mean. That book was written by Simone de Beauvoir, and she disregards race. Race is a key factor into a lot of things, and I know a lot of people don't want to hear this, but race plays a huge and important role in our society, in which we navigate society. Just because it doesn't happen to somebody else, it doesn't mean it's not a reality for the next person coming into contact with a specific situation, only being caused by the fact that they are of a particular race. But also, we as society are saying that men should be dumb and men shouldn't read, men shouldn't engage in female literature, and I think that is flawed. I also think that it is very flawed to put men's fashion taste and men's expression under a microscope, because at the same time there is a demand for men to actually engage in fashion. But if we're pushing in this method, then men will never actually take the time to actually engage in fashion, discover what it is that they like, and build actual communities based on communication and understanding. But with all that said, mouthful, my name is E. Please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and don't hate on a performative man. Re-educate a performative man.